At 5:37 p.m. on December 1st, 2018, Grace, having just wrapped up a backpacking trip from England to New Zealand to meet Jesse. At the same time, Jesse was enjoying pre-date drinks at a local bar, downing several beers before meeting Grace. When he left the bar, there were still at least 4 empty bottles on the table. They met in a popular, crowded area, giving Grace a sense of safety as she met her date for the first time. But this sense of security was false, as Jesse had no intention of doing anything suspicious in public. He was waiting for the moment when they would be alone. Unaware of this, Grace accompanied Jesse to a bar where they drank for over an hour before heading to a Mexican bar at 7:15 for more drinks, and then another bar, the Blue Stone Room, around 8:30 p.m. This is where Jesse tested the waters, seeing if he could get closer to Grace. By 8:54, they shared their first kiss. Jesse excused himself to the bathroom, while Grace sent what would be her last message to her friends, saying the date was going great and that she felt an instant connection with him. She was likely excited at the prospect of spending more time with someone she truly liked. Little did she know, he was about to take her life in a horrific manner. The next morning, Grace's phone buzzed with birthday messages. Her friends were eager to wish her well, but every message went unanswered. The first red flag appeared at 8 a.m., when Jesse was seen entering the elevator alone, casting a suspicious glance at the camera. If you thought he was stepping out to grab a coffee for the birthday girl, you'd be mistaken. During the night, Jesse had strangled Grace to death. Now, he needed to cover up his crime, and fast. He had already set up another Tinder date. By 8:07 a.m., Jesse was out in town, beginning a chilling shopping spree. His first stop was the warehouse on Elliott Street, where he purchased a suitcase big enough to conceal Grace's body. He carefully checked the dimensions to ensure she would fit, planning to dispose of her before anyone discovered what he had done. 25 minutes later, he was at another store, buying cleaning supplies to scrub the crime scene. Jesse returned to his apartment for a few hours before emerging at 10:42 a.m. He then took a taxi to Apex Car Rental to rent a vehicle. What he did next would shock investigators and hasten their efforts to solve this murder. As Grace's lifeless body lay in his apartment, Jesse went on a date with another woman he'd matched with on Tinder. Given he already had the tools to hide one body, it's suspected that this girl could have been his second victim of the day. When he arrived at the bar, Jesse was wearing the same clothes from the night before, possibly the same clothes he wore while killing Grace. We don't know if Jesse's initial messages to this second woman were as aggressive, but during the date, he said something that raised serious red flags and utterly terrified her. Allegedly, he wanted to talk about how to hide a body from the police. The date ended quickly, and this woman's instincts may have saved her life. The horror she must have felt when she later learned the truth about the man she'd narrowly escaped is unimaginable, knowing he likely intended to do to her what he had done to Grace. At 8:56 p.m., Jesse was seen carrying a piece of equipment back to his apartment. More specifically, it was a carpet cleaner, which he intended to use to erase any trace of Grace's presence. He also carried 2 bottles of cleaning solution to ensure the job would be done thoroughly. 30 minutes later, his grim work culminated in the next phase of his plan. He reappeared in the elevator, this time pushing a trolley with several luggage bags, one of which was the suitcase he had purchased that morning. The suitcase was far too heavy for him to carry, as inside was Grace's body. He couldn't just walk through the streets with that much luggage, so that's where the rental car came in. Minutes later, he was seen loading the bags into the vehicle, preparing to move the body to a location where he hoped it would never be found. The following morning at 7 a.m., Jesse purchased a shovel before returning to his apartment to collect clothes for the dry cleaners, eliminating more potential evidence. But he wasn't finished. He stopped at a random trash can and threw away a large garbage bag. Then, he took the rental car for a thorough cleaning, paying extra attention to the rear where he had hidden the suitcase containing Grace's body. By then, his part was done. For the next 2 days, Grace's loved ones were tormented with worry. Nobody had heard from her, she hadn't posted on social media, and both of her phones remained unanswered. On December 5th, her family reported her missing to Auckland police. Her father, David, even flew to Auckland to make a public plea for her safe return.
Grace has been missing for several days. And as a family, we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. To anybody who has seen, spoken to, or come into contact with Grace, come forward and contact the investigation team.
With extensive media attention surrounding the case, it's likely that Jessie saw Grace's father's heartfelt plea. Auckland police were now employing a range of tactics to track Grace's final movements and locate the prime suspect in her disappearance. They quickly discovered that she had gone on a date with a mysterious man, and after painstakingly reviewing hours of surveillance footage, they identified the last person she was with and followed the trail back to his apartment. At 3 p.m. on December 5th, officers arrived at the City Life Hotel. They almost missed Jessie as he spotted them in the lobby while approaching the front entrance. Thinking he could casually walk away without drawing attention, but the sharp-eyed officers weren't fooled, quickly apprehending him before he could escape. At this point, the smartest thing Jessie could do was confess to his crime, perhaps claim it was an accident and face the consequences. But he had no intention of doing so. In the interrogation room, he thought he could talk his way out of it, completely unaware that the police had already witnessed his every move on the night of the murder and had gathered a mountain of evidence against him. As the interview began, Jessie had no reason to lie when recounting the events leading up to the murder.
Tell us about Grace.
So I was talking to Grace on Tinder. We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City, and then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar, which is on the first floor.
It didn't take long before he stumbled into his first lie, claiming that Grace had been the one pushing for the date, despite the evidence clearly showing that Jessie was the one eager to meet her.
Whose idea was it to go to that particular burger place?
Me, because I didn't initially know that she was real.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of... So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets, and you're a completely different person. And it's on Tinder, it's all about the way you look. And so if they use more endearing photos, you're more likely to swipe for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does meeting in a public place sort of protect you from meeting someone who's not as good looking as...
Well, there's security there. So if she wasn't who she said she was, at least in my mind I'd feel safe.
When confronted with surveillance footage, he stuck to his lies, digging himself deeper into a hole he'd struggled to climb out of.
I go down Queen Street, straight down to the bottom, and then hang a left and I head towards the viaduct.
You go to the viaduct of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've kind of walked in a bit of a funny direction if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
Well, it's the direction I normally go.
It's I'm just sort of saying, like, if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
I normally go down Queen Street and then cross at the bottom of Queen Street, go through the containers, and then walk along the wharf.
Yeah. Is there a particular reason you were going to do that?
I feel safer down that way.
The officer conducting the interview quickly became suspicious, noting how Jessie's behaviour and responses didn't quite add up. If Jessie was lying, it would only take a few pointed questions to unravel him completely. As the pressure mounted, Jessie began to panic.
She may be alive and well,
Okay.
but she might also be dead. Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Have I been arrested for something I didn't do?
We haven't been arrested.
Sorry. Holy
Though not yet under arrest, the police were confident he was either directly involved in Grace's disappearance or had knowledge of what happened. The more they investigated, the more evidence they uncovered, all pointing to Jessie as the culprit. It wasn't just the surveillance footage that cracked the case wide open. Remember the suitcase and cleaning products Jessie bought the morning after? Shockingly, he had used Grace's credit card to purchase them, as well as to pay for an additional night at the City Life Hotel. The extra day was meant to give him time to clean up the crime scene, but scrubbing the place with a carpet cleaner wouldn't be enough to hide the evidence. When police searched Jessie's apartment, they found traces of Grace's blood, phone records showing their locations together, and the detailed surveillance footage had Jessie cornered. And during his second interview on December 7th, he had no choice but to confess. This confession would later lead to one of the most unusual and controversial defenses ever presented in court.
She started talking to me about 50 Shades of Grey. We started having sex. At first it was just normal. Asked me if we could get into bondage, and then all I remember is falling asleep in the shower. I need to stop. I need to go. I was just terrified and scared. I thought that she'd gone. I thought she had left.
Pathologist, the specialist doctor, will perform post-mortem. They're very skilled establishing people's causes of death. Do you understand that?
The media dubbed it the 50 Shades of Grey defense. The premise was that someone could consent to dangerous activities during intimacy, fully aware of the risks. If they didn't signal to stop, then what happened would be considered accidental, and the person responsible shouldn't face murder charges. However, this defense has long been seen as a legal loophole, often used by attorneys to reduce charges to manslaughter and secure a lighter sentence. But this did nothing to change the horrific events that followed Grace's death and the disturbing details uncovered during the investigation. From December 1st, the day before their date, until December 7th, police uncovered Google searches made by Jessie inquiring about how to hide a body. On December 9th, 2018, Grace's body was discovered in the Waitakere Ranges. The autopsy revealed she had been strangled and had bruises on her arms and chest, indicating she had been forcefully restrained. In New Zealand, murder charges don't differentiate between first or second degree. This meant that premeditation didn't factor into the trial. The only question was whether Jessie had killed Grace. Despite maintaining his innocence throughout, Jessie was ultimately found guilty. On February 21st, 2020, he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years.